everyone, how's it going? Azren here. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm sitting in my car for this video. I just finished doing some teaching at the library here. I want to talk about improving your writing in today's video. It's a pretty interesting topic, right? I've been doing a lot of writing teaching with my students lately, and so I thought it'd be good to come out and talk a little bit about it. Now, first and foremost, I think the big thing with writing, actually the same as with speaking, the big thing is that it requires a lot of patience. And the reality is that trying to become a strong writer in a lot of ways can actually be more frustrating, if not equally frustrating, as trying to become a good speaker. Because writing is such a different skill than speaking. A lot of people think like, oh, you know, I speak really well, so I can write really well. No, not at all, because the language you use, the words you use, the vocabulary, the sentence structure, the punctuation, there's so many different elements that are completely different in spoken language than in written language. Especially when you're jumping into things like, when you're going into things like, I don't know, like essay writing, right? Writing a 9-page essay, whew, that takes a lot of work. It's almost a completely different language. And so the biggest thing, the absolute most important thing I could really push you guys on is you've got to be patient with yourself when it comes to improving your writing skills. Outside of patience, I think it also really helps to have someone qualified who's a strong writer to help you through the process. I think that really helps a lot. A lot of people try and just figure it out by reading online, in my experience, and that alone doesn't typically do it. And, you know, when you're younger, you can often get away with it. When you're in high school, junior high. But once you enter university, if you're studying English, Spanish, Chinese, whatever, you're studying a language at a university level, this is where you get completely screwed, because you take that English class, you take the English 255 class, and your teacher says, your professor says, I'd like a 12-page paper due on my desk in 2 weeks, and you're like, what? 12 pages? How do I do that? And now you're screwed, because you don't even know the basic fundamentals of writing a good essay or a good paper. So I think finding someone early as possible to help you develop the fundamentals, help you develop the bases, the good bases of writing properly, that really helps. Especially now that I'm really thinking about this, especially because there's different types of writing. You could write a letter, you could write argumentative essays, you could write poems, you could write journal entries, you could write a lot of different types of things you could write that all have different nuances to each one of them. I think as well, when it comes to writing, I think you need to you need to do as much practice as possible, the same as speaking. You need to be writing lots of things and having native speakers correct your writing. Someone's calling me. I'm gonna take this call and I'll continue the video. Sorry about that. I just got a new student actually, which is awesome, or 2 new students rather. Anyway, it really helps to do lots of writing practice and have strong writers, whether they're native or not for that matter. Strong writers correct your writing and help you understand your mistakes and really improve. I think that is a really core element. Now, let's flip the coin as usual. Let's flip the coin and look at this from a different perspective. I think the writing, what's interesting, I made a video about this before, but the writing often will improve if you work a lot on your speaking. It's funny, whenever I work with people on reading, writing, that sort of thing, I've noticed that people who generally speak very well, they're very eloquent, they speak with proper grammar, things like that, often they have an easier time transitioning into writing than people who speak poorly. If somebody speaks with bad grammar, when they go to write, it's just going to be even worse. And so weirdly, I think in many cases, I think it actually can be a good starting point to go, hey, let's actually fix your speaking and then transition into writing. If you have the time, obviously, right? Like if you need to start writing essays tomorrow because you're taking some class, you know, we don't have 2 years to fix your speaking so you can transition to writing. You ought to jump in right away and get to the core issues and start fixing things fast. So I think that's that. On the writing side as well, I think it's a painful process. I said it before, you have to be patient, right? But it's a painful process because it's funny, I'll work with grade 7 kids, and it's like 1 paragraph can take 7 hours. 7, I'm not even exaggerating. And it's like, you're probably thinking, how could that ever take 7 hours? Well, because you're reading sentence by sentence, word by word. You're looking at so many elements in the freaking paragraph that it takes a long time. Another thing, I'm just getting lots of ideas as I'm talking here. Another thing is when you're writing, a really big thing you want to look for is you want to make sure there's not a lot of repetition. You want to make sure there's not a single word in there that's repeated like 27 times. Keep the repetition to a minimum. That's going to help your essay come across a lot more powerful, a lot more concise, a lot more professional, really. And on the same note of repetition, I think you want to be very mindful with how you're starting your sentences. For instance, if you're starting your sentence with the blah 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 blah, the blah 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 blah, you can't start them with the same thing every time, right? You want to vary it. You want to create some variety in the way that you write. That's a really big part of it. Let's pick another thing. Holy macro, so many things to talk about when it comes to writing. I would have never guessed I'd have so many things to say on the topic of good writing. I think writing, especially when you're doing essays, you want to be very mindful in argumentative essays to not actually use a lot of like I, we, things like that. Keep it impersonal. Don't talk about I, don't talk about we. Keep it really neutral. So instead of things like, in this essay, I will prove blah, 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 blah. Instead of saying I will prove, this essay will prove blah, 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 blah. Do you see it? You want to keep yourself and keep the I's and keep the word we out of it as much as possible. Anyway, I could go forever. Holy man, I would have never guessed I could talk for this long when it comes to essays. I think I've just been helping a lot of people with writing lately. Just been finding a lot of writing students. So, but long story short, there's a lot that comes to writing. There's a lot of elements, a lot of moving parts, and you need to be very patient with yourself, because it's probably equally hard, if not harder, to become an extremely good writer than it is to become a very, very good speaker. So anyway, have an awesome day. I hope this video turns out. Hope it does. I feel like it was a bunch of word vomit throughout the whole video. So hope it turned out, but I will see you guys later. Bye for now. I'll probably just post it just for fun anyway. Just see what happens.